All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Very excited to talk to you today. I'm going to go through just a few stories from my career, some ups and downs. For those of you who are in the mortgage business, you'll feel my pain. For those of you who are not in the mortgage business, maybe thinking about the career, this is give you hopefully some insight into just real life, without the sugar on top of how it goes in this industry. It's an amazing business to be in. I've been in the mortgage business for 16 years now. And I plan on this being my career for the rest of my life. So, I started in the mortgage business in 2006. My dad was in the mortgage business for a long time, probably close to 30 years. If he's listening to this, he's probably going to say I'm giving him too many years. But he's an old guy now, so it's okay. But originally, like growing up, I'm like, looking at my dad in the mortgage business, and that sounded like the most boring job on the face of the planet. And I never thought I would get into the mortgage business. And then lo and behold, moved out to Arizona in 2006 and working a restaurant job, playing golf, having fun. I just graduated college and got bored of that very quickly. So I'm like, what should I do? And a friend of mine actually had gone to work for the bank that my dad was at, in a division that was doing some mortgages, like some subprime mortgages and high interest rate credit cards and loans and stuff. And so ended up starting there. That was a good place to get like an entry level position. And then after a year of that, my dad was able to get me an interview with the mortgage department, and so made a transition into the mortgage industry, full time loan officer in 2007. And so that was a great opportunity and great time for me to get into the business. It was 2007, so it was at the peak of the bubble, and things were pretty easy to get loans done right in that moment of time. And I started out as a junior loan officer. So I was covering a couple bank branches for the bank I was employed at. And, we're kind of just humming along, doing a few loans. I had a mentor who was helping to train me. And then, as things went on, the market crashed in 2008. But being at a bank, it actually worked out in my advantage because we had lots of walk-in traffic coming in through the bank. And so I had a lot of free deals coming in that way. And when the rates went down, all of a sudden the phones were off the hook through the bank. And interest rates had just got down to 4.875 in 2009. And I remember right around Christmas, my phone was going. And, I just worked all through like Christmas, December into January. I can remember telling people, we will never see 4.875 again. This is it. This is the lowest rates will ever be. You got to refi right now. And so did a ton of business with walk-in traffic, and that was a fun time in my career, having my dad help to train me. And he was a regional manager for the bank in a different state, in Washington State, and I was down here in Arizona. But I had the ear of someone who was relatively high up in the organization, and he was always available to coach and mentor me. And I remember one time I'm like a junior loan officer. This must have been about 2009. And my dad had given me the heads up on some major FHA changes that were happening. And this is when I think it was when they first increased the FHA loan limits temporarily during the crisis. And so we're in a meeting, there's like 30 people in the branch meeting that we had once a month. And so, I kind of pipe up. I'm like 24 years old, so I kind of pipe up, hey, guys, there's going to be these FHA changes coming next week. And literally everybody started laughing, including the branch manager. They're all laughing because they're like, you have no clue what's happening with FHA. And they were laughing in my face. And then the next day, the email comes out from corporate announcing these changes. Then the branch manager sent out an email like, I think we should all apologize to Jeff. I was like, that's right. You should apologize to me. And so, that was a cool time. That was a good opportunity to learn the business at a bank with those deals coming in, because I didn't have to generate my own referral sources. I could cover a few different bank branches. And with rates going down during that period of time, this was 2008 to 2013, I was able to kind of stay alive with deals just walking in the bank. So it gave me a lot of practice on how to originate loans. And, the banks, like the big bank that I was at, the mortgage division was one of 84 lines of business they had at that time. So a big bank like that, they don't need to do a great job in the mortgage space. They just offer it because they don't want their clients to go to another bank and then lose their checking account and their credit cards and their savings accounts and everything else that goes along with that relationship. So they had mortgage lending to keep clients in their sphere. And they didn't necessarily put the resources in it to do a great job at it. So while it was good because you were getting leads provided to you and you didn't have to go out and prospect for your own business, it was really tough because it was hard to close on time. It was hard to provide a high level of service. And, the best referral source for loan officers is real estate agents. Well, most real estate agents don't want to work with a loan officer at a depository bank because they know that the banks have trouble closing on time. So that made it really difficult to build my own referral sources. And then, when you're at a bank like that, my commission per deal back then was like a third or even less than a third of what it is per deal today in percentage terms. So you get a lot smaller piece of the pie if you're not the one generating the referral sources. And so, fast forward, I've been at the bank for 7 years and I was doing Tuesday status calls on all my purchase transactions, which nobody in a bank was doing that at that time. So every Tuesday I was call both agents, give them an update, call the buyers, give them an update on every purchase deal. And I had landed a meeting with one of the highest producing agent teams in the Southeast Valley. So this is in 2012, fall of 2012. So we had closed this transaction. I called the listing agent to ask for a meeting. I'm like, hey, I'd love to meet you guys for coffee. Jeff Smith, Wells Fargo. They're like, you know what, Jeff, you did an amazing job on that transaction. And yeah, we'll meet you for coffee. I just about fell out of my chair. I'd never gotten a realtor appointment with an agent that was high, that produced at that level. And so I'm scared out of my mind going into this meeting. I met with the listing agent, one of their buyer's agents at Wildflower Bread Company, and we had some coffee there. Meeting went great. So now I'm on cloud nine. I'm like, this is it. I've made my business. I'm getting my own referral sources coming in. Like now I'm finally going to be able to build purchase business because when you're at the bank, it's mostly refis. So when the market's good for refis, you do great. When the market's bad for refis, you really struggle. So I was super excited about landing this team. This is a high producing team. They were doing 150 transactions a year at that time, 130 transactions a year. So get the first two, like within 2 weeks, I had 3 referrals from them. 2 of them were pre-qualified. And then within about 3 weeks, both were under contract. So now I'm like excited and I'm also scared because I'm worried that at least one of these transactions is not going to go well and I'm going to blow this relationship. So I'm like putting all my energy into making sure these deals are going well. And the first one's humming along that thankfully the clients were super well qualified. And I mean, that loan could basically close itself. So all I had to do is just not screw it up. And that one was going along just great. The other one was going along fine. It was a doctor program we had until I got a call from an underwriter on a Saturday telling me that the loan was declined. And this particular underwriter was super difficult to deal with. He's arrogant. He was, just really rough to deal with and didn't want to try and help borrowers to close loans. It's like he's looking at every deal of how can I turn this loan down? And, the layers of management are so big at a large organization like that. You can't, if there's people like that underwriting loans, there's not really anything you can do about it because it has to go through their department. And so this guy calls me on Saturday. He's like, yeah, loans declined. I'm like, what do you mean loans declined? And he's like, well, he's not eligible for the doctor program because he's a DO, not an MD. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Are you sure? He's like, yes, I'm 100% sure. And I'm like, well, why don't we check with an underwriting manager? Like, I want to make sure that we're 100% certain of this. He's like, I don't need to check. I'm 100% sure. And I'm like, okay, well, just give me till Monday and don't decline the loan over the weekend. Let me just think about this. And so now I'm in full panic mode and I'm thinking about how has this happened? And I'm trying to figure out what can I do? And I look up the guidelines and I can't find anything that says DOs are ineligible. So I escalated to an underwriting manager, to my manager on Monday. She escalates it to an underwriting manager and then to another manager. It's got to go like a bajillion managers when you're a big company like that. And lo and behold, they actually agree with me, which was a super rare occurrence at an organization like that. So I'm like, yes. And so the head underwriting manager's like, nope, the borrower's eligible for that loan. Let's close it. So now this underwriter sits on the loan for 5 days. And at this point now, I've gone up to Seattle to visit my parents with my wife, Danielle, and I'm in my parents' condo. And we're on day 5 that this file's been sitting on this underwriter's desk, and it's a Friday, and loan is supposed to close on Monday, and we're not gonna close on time, and I had been giving the agents a little bit of a heads up, and now I've got to call them all and tell them we're going to miss closing, and here's why, and I can't get hold of this underwriter, and I was so mad. I just felt so out of control. I was like shaking. And I remember sitting at my parents' little desk in the hallway of their condo, and I'm like, cuss words are flying. And my mom looks at me, she's like, Jeffrey. And like, I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. I was so stressed out because here I had done a great job, landed this relationship, and now it's the second deal, and I'm going to blow it. And so, we end up closing late, and the agent team wasn't real happy about it. And it was kind of one of those things where it's like they expected that would happen. They were hoping I'd prove them wrong. They expected that that's what would happen at some point, and it did, on the second deal. And so I was super discouraged. And, now we're in this point in time as well where rates are rising and there's no refi business. I'm hardly closing any deals at Wells Fargo. And my wife is pregnant with our first child, Riley, our oldest son. And, we didn't have a ton of money in savings and stuff. And now I'm going through these really bad months and bringing in hardly any money. And we've got a mortgage and everything else. And so I at that point, I was like, you know what? This business is not for me. It's too stressful. I can't handle this anymore. I think I'm going to get out of the business. And I actually started looking into becoming a financial advisor. I started looking at, well, what other sales positions could I take? And, Danielle is pregnant and she's now not working. And so there was a lot of pressure. And I had called a friend of mine who went to an independent mortgage banking company. Well, he wasn't a friend of mine. It was somebody who I knew of who was at the same bank that I was at. And at the time when he was at the bank, he was the number one producer in Arizona. He had been out for about a year and a half at this point. So I called him to find out, hey, man, how are things going for you at an independent mortgage banker? And, like the big corporations, they feed you the Kool-Aid and they use scare tactics to get you to stay within the organization. So for the 7.5 years that I've been at this organization, like they would always tell you, oh, if you leave, you're not going to make it. I mean, you'll get no support. They won't help you with anything with your loans. They won't even give you a computer. You're going to have to buy your own computer and all this stuff. And it was always scare tactics. So then I called this guy, cold called him out of the blue. I'm like, hey man, we worked at Wells at the same time. I just want to see how things have been going for you this last year and a half since you left. He's like, you would not believe how good it is out here. It's unbelievable. And he starts telling me all this stuff. And I remember I was sitting in my closet. I had gotten home from work. I'm sitting in my closet changing my clothes when he called me back. And I ended up sitting in my closet for like an hour talking to this guy, and just my jaw on the floor. Could not believe all the things he was telling me about how it was going on that side of the business, because I had been conditioned not to believe that for 7.5 years. And so he was having this amazing experience. It was like, then I went and had coffee with him, that following week. And it was like in the scene in The Matrix when Neo takes the red pill or the blue pill, whichever one it was. And now he's in, outside of the Matrix or in the Matrix. And that was a life-changing moment for me. And so I realized, I'm like, okay, it's not the industry, it's the company that I'm at. It's the structure of the company that I'm in, and I need to make a change. So now we're into like late December of 2012. And so I'm starting to interview with mortgage banking companies to figure out, well, where should I go? And I talked to like 7 different independent mortgage banking companies, made a decision to go to one. I had to pass the test to get my license. So now we're into January, and I'm starting at this mortgage banker at the end of January. Danielle is still pregnant, and we still don't have money coming in. And now I've got to pass this licensing test so I can start my new position at an independent mortgage banker. And so I ended up thankfully passing the test on the first try. That was a scary time as well. And then, now I'm into the independent mortgage banking world with no referral sources of my own. I didn't have any realtors who were referring me business. And I had to start over. And so that was really tough in that period of time because I didn't close a loan for another 6 months. And so thankfully the position that I had landed was like a sales manager type position. I had a small salary that I got every month. So we were basically living off of that. And the reason I didn't close any loans the first 6 months was I at the big bank never learned sales. I never had to do sales. I just opened my laptop, sat in the bank, and waited for the business to come in. And now in this, on the other side of the business at an independent mortgage banking company, I had to learn how to build all my own referral sources. Well, my mistake was I spent the first 90 days trying to figure out process and like what their guidelines were and how you do a file over there and all this stuff. And I wasn't doing anything to move the needle as it relates to bringing in new business. And then after 90 days and nothing's happening, I realized I've got to make a change. I've got to focus on bringing in deals and I'll worry about all the other stuff later. And so I started calling 50 to 70 realtors a day, just straight cold calls all day long. I just call all day long. I wouldn't leave until I got at least 50 calls in. I didn't have anything else to do. And Danielle's still pregnant. She's coming up on the birth of our first child. Riley was born in August, so this is probably like June. And now I'm starting to get leads coming in. So after 90 days of doing 50 plus outbound calls a day, I've got leads coming in, and now I'm starting to get deals closing. And then about 9 months in, I'm doing 3 deals a month, and I was off to the races. But that whole period of time took a lot longer than it should have because I made the mistake of not focusing on sales right out of the gate. So there were, thinking back over that period of Wells, period at the large bank, like there were some really good years where I did really well financially, closed a ton of business, was one of the higher originators. And then I had some years where it was really tough and didn't close much business at all because my percentage of purchase business was very low. I was like 10% purchase, where if you're like 70% purchase, even when rates go up, then you're not going to see a huge drop off in business. So that was my big lesson from that transition. And then went into this independent mortgage banker, and I got this position at this independent mortgage banking company as a sales manager, and there's a new branch they're going to be opening in Chandler. There were some top producers who were going to be in that branch as like the anchors of the branch to provide the production and financial stability for the branch. There was a branch manager who was going to oversee the office, and then there was going to be me, who's the sales manager. Well, now I'm 90 days in at this company, and the branch manager and the top producers quit along with a whole bunch of other people. There's like a mass exodus from the company I was at to a different company in town. And now I'm sitting here supposed to be going to this Chandler office, and there's nobody else going to the Chandler office. It's just me. And so the regional manager at the time, she said, "Hey, we'd love to promote you to run this branch." So I thought, okay, great. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and run this branch. So now I've got this like 4,500 square foot office in Chandler, and it's literally me. I have nobody else, and I have this massive office, and I've just started closing like a few deals a month. I had this long stretch where I wasn't doing any deals. So now I'm trying to learn how to recruit loan officers, and I'm still trying to learn how to do sales and bring in loans. And that was really hard because I didn't know, I wasn't comfortable really with doing any of it. And now I've got to wear multiple hats, and I've got this massive office I've got to try to recruit people into. And when you walk in there and the whole place is empty, it just looked bad. So I was able to start recruiting people, and I got it up to like 16 people all together. But this was an office that could hold like 60 people. So even with 16 people, this branch was like a ghost town, and that was a really hard time, just that whole period of time, because I couldn't focus enough on one thing. I'm stretched thin with trying to manage this office and the people who are in there, but I'm also like trying to figure out how to do sales and what I'm supposed to do for that, and so what I learned during that period of time was, sales is the most important thing in our industry. Even as a manager, you've got to know how to execute in sales and how to generate business, because at an independent mortgage banking company like I'm at now, or if you're an independent mortgage broker, you have to bring in all of your own deals. And without deals coming in, a branch cannot be supported, a team cannot be supported. And so you've got to be super dialed in on sales. And so, ultimately, like that office ended up not being a success. We ended up closing down the office, and I moved to a different office, and they sublet the office to a real estate company. But that was really the best thing that ever happened for me, because I pushed myself super hard. I learned a lot about leadership and how to manage people during that time, because I had 16 in the office and had to learn how to deal with all these different personalities. I also had to learn how to juggle like my own sales and then trying to help others with their sales. And so made a ton of mistakes, but learned a ton during that process as well. And going forward from there, I made kind of a lateral transition to a different independent mortgage banking company. And at that time, I made that move because they were willing to hire a full-time assistant for me. And I felt like that was the most important thing to be able to build my business, because you get to this certain point where you're doing a certain number of loans a month, like 5 to 6 loans a month, and you're very busy doing those 5, 6 loans, and you're busy closing the loans, you're not spending time going to get more business. And so you kind of run into this ceiling. Well, when you hire someone on your team, now you can replace those hours that you're spending on closing the loans and delegate that to your assistant, and they have them focus on chasing the paperwork and getting the deals closed while you go out and bring in new business. And that, along with knowing the tactics for how to generate new business, that's the key to the whole business in the mortgage industry, is building a team and then delegating to the team all of the non-sales activity. Taking applications, reviewing income and asset paperwork, looking at credit reports, issuing pre-qual letters, providing weekly status updates for transactions that are in process, having an assistant who checks all of your email and responds to important emails, delegates out other important emails, and leaves just a few for you to respond to during the day. They manage your calendar and set up all of your appointments, confirm all of your appointments for you, putting together marketing pieces, anything that's paperwork, scheduling related, that can be delegated out to other people. The things that can't be delegated out is the lead generation and sales activities. That's always got to be done by the leader of the team. And the what I call point of sale client interaction. So I do every pre-qual consultation with every client who does a pre-approval with us. I do a 30 to 45-minute consultation with them and take them through all of their financing options. Clients expect that I am involved in that process. So, that's really what I do, is sales, client consultations, and then I manage the team and manage our office. So, you get to this space where you're focused on leadership, point of sale, and driving sales. And that's how you can scale from there. And then the more loans you do, the more team members you add, and you can just keep cranking more and more volume because you've got more and more help. So that's really, really important to getting to that next level, because sales takes a lot of time. You should be spending at least 20 to 25 hours a week in sales, but then all the other stuff is going to take at least 20 to 25 hours a week. So you've got to have a team there helping you to do those different components. And, being a good leader is super important to reach high levels of production in this industry, because anyone who's done this knows, like, the mortgage industry is very complex. There's a ton of different guidelines. You have to be really well versed with all kinds of financial documents, different financial instruments. You have to understand markets. You have to understand credit reports, all kinds of things related to finance. And so training people to work on your team takes a long time, because you can train someone, over 6 months or a year, but then it really takes another 1 to 2 years of experience for somebody to be able to handle most situations without needing a lot of help. So you've got to be a good enough leader that when you hire people, you can train them appropriately, and then they stay with you long enough to gain that experience and then really get to a place where they're pretty independent and don't need a lot of help from you. And when you get to that point, they're adding a ton of time to your plate to replace it with sales generating activities. And so, I made that transition to that second company in 2017, hired my first person on my team in 2017. And I had really been stuck in like the level of like 2 to 5 loans a month. I'd have 1 or 2 months where I'd have a good month and close like 8 or 10 loans. But I was always kind of in that 2 to 5 loans a month category. And then once I hired my first full-time team member, I quickly went to 10 loans a month. It was like almost like in 6 months, I was at 10 loans a month because I had trained her. She was doing a ton to help me on the paperwork side of things and closing all the loans. And all of a sudden, I had all this extra time to go out and generate more business, which I did. And then that started to scale it up. So, fast forward to 2020. 2020 was a crazy year for everybody. Especially in the mortgage industry because we saw all-time low interest rates. So I refer to 2020 thinking in terms just of mortgage financing as mortgage Disneyland. Once the interest rates went down in April or into March, we absolutely exploded with business. We were already doing good business. I was doing like 15 to 20 loans a month at that time, and maybe 10 to 20 loans a month at that time. And then all of a sudden we're doing 30 plus loans a month, 35, close to 40 loans a month. And so I had 3 people on my team heading into March. I quickly scaled up to 8 people on my team by the time we were like fall of 2020. And so had I not learned like how to train, what my process was, who needed to do what on the team, had I not learned that prior to 2020, it would have been really tough to adjust to that during the middle of a refi rally like that because we were so busy. Everybody, I wasn't even doing sales at that time because there's just so much business coming in. We were just trying to stay on top of all the loans we had coming at us. But had I not understood how to create some of these processes and manage and lead a team, it would have been really difficult to deal with the volume. But I was able to hire a bunch of people, train them, and scale our business up. And then we were able to take advantage of all of that business coming in. So 2020, that was the first year that I hit 7 figures in the mortgage industry. I was at 1.2 million in personal income. And I couldn't have got there without having a really strong team and without having some of these experiences that I went through along the way. And so, now thinking about like the team going forward, I've been able to stay at that level, for a couple of years now, and I've got the team in place. My team has got a lot more experience now, so they don't need nearly as much help, and they're operating pretty independently, which is giving me time to do things like this, like create a podcast and social branding and do a lot more outreach through social and building connections with all kinds of different referral partners. Without a team, that's not possible. So, going forward, as you have a team and you have a process, it becomes very scalable as your production grows to just add another seat on the bus. You've already got the systems in place and you already have the training procedures in place because you've done it with prior team members. So it almost becomes somewhat assembly line. Like if you can make good hires and bring the right people into the organization, then you can scale up very quickly and adapt to different levels of business that you'll hit as you run a team. So, so that year in 2020, that was the first time I closed, over 80 million. And, now we have our sights set on 100 million for our next level of production. So building a team, that's the most important aspect in the mortgage business, to be a high level originator and to get it all done. And hope you guys enjoyed that. DM me for any questions. Have a good one.